Hello, my name is Scump. Numbers. People use them for counting. When there's more than one of something, that's where numbers come in to save us all. There's a 1, there's a 2. We're talking about a sequel today. I couldn't come up with a better intro. So a couple months back I watched the original Friday the 13th and found it interesting enough to talk about. It was Baby's first movie review, so yeah, I got a couple of things wrong, but hey, now we're here at Baby's third movie review. For those unaware, I have committed myself to watching all of the Friday the 13th movies so I can catch up on some classic horror films. And while it's been slow progress, here I am at the second movie after finding the first one to just be kinda alright. It is a perfectly serviceable slasher flick, coming from a guy who's watching them 40 years after they originally came out. But back in the day, it was instrumental for the growth of the horror genre. With the success of the first movie, a second one was greenlit, made, and released a year later, almost to the day. Director Sean S. Cunningham would not return as director. Instead, the reins were given over to Steve Miner, which was probably for the best considering the legal hell the first movie was cast into for the next 4 decades. But where I thought the first Friday the 13th was just kind of alright, Friday the 13th Part 2 is just a better version of that first movie in almost every single way. Pretty much everything I thought was weak about the original movie is much better in this one. It's still not a perfect movie, but a welcome step in the right direction for the series. For the most part.
Say, you want to come inside my clubhouse?
Hello, I'm a child of the early 2000s, and here are my thoughts on a 40-year-old movie for anyone who even cares. I think if I want to talk about why this movie works for me, I have to reiterate my feelings on the original. I'll try to keep it brief. If you want all the details, you can check out my video on the first Friday. But for those who don't care, here's the Cliff Notes version. So, I have mixed feelings on the first Friday the 13th. In many ways, it was a pioneer of slasher media, but unlike movies like Alien and Halloween, which are pioneers of the genre but also just damn good movies in their own right, Friday the 13th was not. First off, the characters are as bland as cardboard. Okay, that's a bit harsh. I did like some of them. In particular, I liked Annie, but she's killed incredibly early. I liked Ned, but he gets almost no screen time before he's killed off screen. Other than them, there's no really good characters in this movie. Except for Mrs. Voorhees, but that's only because Betsy Palmer absolutely killed that performance. That's another thing, the main killer. I don't like the reveal of Pamela Voorhees as the main killer. I get why some would like it, seeing this unassuming old lady be the person that killed all these people, but to me it's just a bad reveal and is extremely anticlimactic. You build up this whole movie wondering who the killer is, and it's this random character you've never seen and is never mentioned once before she's revealed as the killer. I don't like it. But the main thing about this movie is that it's just cliche. And while I don't think that's inherently a bad thing, if you have nothing else, it's definitely a point to be critiqued. Hello, my name is Scump. In my video, I called Friday the 13th a ripoff of Halloween, citing a quote from Victor Miller, who wrote the story.
Sean called me up one day and said, "Halloween is making a lot of money, let's rip it off."
Now, do I actually think that Friday ripped off Halloween? No. Not at all. These are completely different movies and should be treated as such, but I only thought it fair to use that as a point of comparison since the writer himself flopped that one right on the table. I don't regret calling it a ripoff for the sake of the video, but playing with similar elements doesn't make something a ripoff. It's like calling Family Guy a ripoff of The Simpsons. That's basically to say, it isn't. You watch both of them and get completely different experiences from one another, and having the same general premise doesn't mean anything. So I may have gone off the deep end a little bit describing my feelings, but that's all just to say, the first movie is not great. I understand it's the first of its genre, it's a product of its time and all that, but that doesn't make me like it anymore. I still think it's painfully generic and doesn't really have a whole lot of memorable qualities. The second one, on the other hand, now that one I can get down with. Part 2 really took everything I thought was bad about the first movie and made it so much better without sacrificing the distinctive style and energy that the first one had. It's basically just the first movie, but better in every way. Better characters, a more interesting and memorable main villain, a more airtight story. Everything I thought was wrong with the first one is gone. Now, is it a perfect movie? Not even close. It still has a lot of holes to fill, but I find it so much better of a movie overall than that first one. And I also think it's just a genuinely good step in the right direction for the series going forward. To start off with, the characters are actual characters. They all have personalities and are likable in their own right, rather than just being hunks of meat waiting to be slaughtered.
Hey!
I also think the idea of the movie taking place at a summer counselor training camp is a much more believable idea than 6 people running an entire summer camp, especially since most of the counselors that show up aren't even named characters. But let's settle down for a second and back up to the cold open, because this is our one appearance of Alice from the first movie. The sole survivor of Camp Crystal Lake has a bad dream about the events of the first movie, giving an excuse for recapping the original. Oh no, I'm having a bad dream, no! She goes about her normal nightly routine, all while the camera does the stalker thing. She puts a kettle on the stove, opens the fridge, and finds Mrs. Voorhees' head. She's grabbed from behind and stabbed through the temple. I think it's a fitting opening to the movie. It wipes its hands clean of the first movie and allows the movie to craft its own identity with new characters at a new location, even if we are still on Crystal Lake. The story goes that the actress for Alice, Adriana King, was dealing with some personal issues following the first movie's success, including a stalker.
After part 1 came out, within a few weeks, I had a stalker. It was 1980 before stalking was taken seriously. It wasn't until after the release of part 1 that all of the insanity started in my life, and I honestly could not focus on anything else.
Holy shit. So she wanted her involvement in the story to be as minimal as possible. Understandably. And if they had to write her out of the story, why not make her the cold open victim? I do find it weird that the sole survivor of the first movie would be killed off so immediately in the sequel, but I get it. And this is probably the best way to do it. The kill is quick and effective, even if it doesn't really show a whole lot, but it works for what it has to do. But alright, let's get to the actual characters. The first ones we see are this movie's horny couple, Sandra and Jeff, and let me tell you, they are a drastic improvement over the horny couple of the first movie. The first movie had 2 characters I can't even remember the names of that were just really boring. In the sequel, we got these characters with actual personalities, and I like their dynamic, with Sandra being much more headstrong and reckless, and Jeff being much more high-strung and anxious, such as being overly protective of his truck.
This is great to see you guys. It's gonna be just like old times.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
I like them. I also like this movie's funny guy, Ted. He's given a lot more screen time compared to Ned from the first movie, which allows his character to shine a whole lot more. I mean, just look at this guy. He just looks like he embodies the personality of a nerdy guy you'd want to chill and have a beer with.
999 Heineken!
I should also mention that I love the banter in this movie. It's very genuine and actually got me to crack up a couple of times.
Come and get him! Here.
This movie has a really nice sense of humor that is a breath of fresh air from the first, since it makes these characters seem so much more real and like actual people.
What's green and red and moves 100 miles an hour? What? Frog in a blender. That wasn't fun.
The next character of note is Mark, an athlete who's wheelchair bound following a motorcycle accident. I like his sense of hope and compassion. He's just a wholesome guy all around.
Is it permanent?
Doctors think so. I don't. I don't intend to be in this thing the rest of my life.
Meanwhile, there's Vicky, who is super thirsty for Mark, and while that seems like a bad thing, I think these characters have a super sweet dynamic, and their flirtations are kinda cute in a way.
I only want your fingers.
What?
They're definitely the best couple in the series so far. It's a pretty low bar, but that's besides the point. The last two named counselors are probably the weakest of the movie. Terry is just a hot girl who only exists to be perved on by Scott, who is just a terrible person. He's just a weirdo who's constantly creeping on Terry, and I don't like him. Though I'd rather have a character that I actively dislike rather than just be bored by them, so that's a plus. Terry's still just kind of boring though. I mean, just put on a bra for fuck's sake, you're just asking for a wardrobe malfunction. The last characters are our main counselors. We got everyone's favorite, Paul Holt, hell yeah, he's our boy, and his girlfriend Ginny. I like them a lot. Paul constantly tries his best to show compassion and have a genuine relationship with his counselors, and he's just the best.
Okay, you two, take off, and I'll talk to you at dinner, all right?
We'll never do it again, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Holt.
You're not even gonna reprimand him? No punishment? What kind of place is this?
Ginny,
Yes, Paul.
no seconds on dessert for Jeff and Sandra tonight?
Ginny's a good character too. She's a child psychology major and is responsible for the movie's psychoanalysis of the main killer, which I should probably talk about, shouldn't I? Yep, Jason's here, bitches! But it's not the Jason you'd think of. Most people think of Jason and think of this slow, thoughtless, unstoppable force that will kill you by any means once he sets his sights on you. Not this movie though. In this movie, he's a survivalist, he's a woodsman, and he runs. He's got the jets. He's a stalking killer who kills not because he wants to, but because he doesn't know any better than to kill and survive. I like this angle with Jason. You don't really get to see that side of Jason where he's just fighting for his own survival. And I like that he can actually be seen as a sympathetic killer, only doing what he does because it's all he knows.
I mean, what would it be like today? Some kind of out-of-control psychopath? A frightened retard?
It's an interesting way to look at the character, further developed by Ginny's analysis of the legend.
I mean, I doubt Jason would have even known the meaning of death. Or at least until that horrible night. He must have seen his mother get killed. And all just because she loved him. I mean, isn't that what her revenge was all about? Her sense of loss? Her rage at what she thought happened?
It's from this analysis I have to take back something I said in the first video. Mrs. Voorhees' run into insanity was the result of a death that never actually happened, and Jason's return was only spurred by a thirst for vengeance at the very death of his mother. But unlike his mother, the movie doesn't pussyfoot around with who the killer is. Right from the cold open, you know that it's someone who is out for revenge following the death of Mrs. Voorhees, so it has to be someone related to them. From there, before any murders can even take place, you are told of the Jason legend in a campfire tale, which further tells the audience in a realistic way who the killer is and his motivations. I like this way of doing the main killer a lot better than shoehorning in a killer and their backstory in the last 20 minutes of the damn movie. I should also talk about the setting. The story takes place 5 years after the events of the first movie. Camp Crystal Lake has been condemned following the massacre, and the whole story takes place in a camp counselor training grounds bordering Crystal Lake. I like this. It canonizes the events of the first movie while giving a genuine reason that we'd be back at Crystal Lake even after the events of the first movie. This also allows Sandra to show off her reckless side as she convinces Jeff to explore the condemned camp despite being told the area is off limits.
Jeff, I just gotta see that place.
What place?
That camp, Camp Blood.
You're crazy.
Oh, I've just got to. Maybe there is something to that legend. Oh, come on, I'm serious.
No way. You're not getting me out there.
No way, Leon.
Way.
The character development and story in this movie flow so much more smoothly than they ever did in the original. This also aided by the camera work. You are constantly given camera angles from far away or behind bushes, which reinforces the stalker mentality of Jason, but also makes things a lot more tense, since not every single one of these scenes ends with someone getting killed or something bad happening. It's just another thing to keep you on edge throughout the movie. But enough piddling and paddling about characters and shenanigans and story. You came to Friday the 13th movie, which means you're looking for one thing and one thing only. People fucking dying! Let's get to them kills and see what we're working with. The first thing to know is Crazy Ralph returns from the first movie. Hell yeah, everyone loves Crazy Ralph.
God damn it, Ralph.
Except for that guy. He's the first kill of the movie as we see him staring down a girl while she's changing, and Jason don't take too kindly of Pervert, so he garrotes him from behind a tree. The blood effect is minimal and he's just kinda choked out, so that's lame, but surely the kills will be better from there. Next one on the list is this cop who, after picking up Sandra and Jeff while they're trespassing on Crystal Lake, spots Jason running across the road. Giving chase, he stumbles across Jason's home, and after stopping to open a door, he gets a quick axe to the back of the head. There's no blood, but I like the shot of the axe hitting the head, and his reaction is kinda funny, so I'll give it a pass. Nah. At this point, Paul invites all the counselors out for a night on the town. All non-named counselors are taken out of the equation, as well as Paul himself, Ginny, and Ted, which is a much better way of getting rid of authority figures than this disco stew looking ass dude just leaving because a movie needs to happen. This leaves 6 murder victims for Mr. Voorhees to play with. The first one is that freaking creep Scott when he steals Terry's clothes while she skinny dips alone, because that's normal. He plays keep away with Terry's shirt only to step into a rope trap. When Terry leaves to get a knife to cut him loose, Jason comes by and slits his throat. Again, blood effects are pretty minimal and it's a quick and dirty throat slice that cuts away pretty quickly, and they don't even use the right side of the machete. That's the dull side, Jason. When Terry comes back, she finds Scott dead and is killed off screen. Man, these kills are freaking lame so far. They totally redeem themselves with the next one though, because Mark gets a machete to the face, hell yeah! And then he rolls backwards down a set of stairs as his body flops about, yes! It does end in a freeze frame zoom in with crappy filters, which sucks, but seeing that machete to the head followed by his ending battle with the stairs, like come on, that's so good! Next, the J-Man gets a twofer when he finds the horny couple doing horny couple things and stabs them both through the middle with a spear. It doesn't show the actual stabbing, but I'll give this one a pass since it's shot in a way that you don't actually need to see it. Just seeing the spear, the reaction, and the bloody tip hitting the ground is enough. Sick kill, I like it. The same cannot be said for Vicky, who finds Jason hiding under the covers like me hiding from my dad so he doesn't see that I have my DS under the covers. Bye-bye! Shut up! After a long shot of Jason approaching with a knife, she's stabbed off screen. Oh, these kills are lame. It's at this point in the movie that Paul and Ginny decide to head back, leaving Ted to continue his drinking, avoiding his fate at the hands of JJ. Remember kids, if you think you have to go home, don't. Continue drinking. Everything's fine. During their investigation, Jason sneaks up and jumps them, but Paul gets that perfect parry off on Jason, resulting in a scuttle that Ginny does absolutely nothing to help with. When Jason emerges, Ginny just runs away. Great girlfriend you got there, Paul. A chase ensues. There's hiding, there's running, but at one point she hides under a bed and a rat just comes up and starts pissing. Or maybe Ginny's pissing herself because of the rat, who knows? Either way, the piss gives away her position, and Jason hatches the giga-brain plan of standing on a chair to make her think he left, which does work, but as soon as she emerges, the chair fucking breaks under him. What the fuck? Ginny keeps running and eventually makes it to the killer shack, where she opens the same door the cop from earlier opened, only to discover a shrine to Mrs. Voorhees. She galaxy brains a plan to wear Pamela's sweater and mimic her to get Jason to back down long enough to get a fatal blow on him. But Jason sees his mom's head behind her just in time to get a flawless block off to disarm her. But my main man Paul shows back up and tussles with Jason, allowing Ginny to plant a machete in his shoulder. He stays still long enough that he can be unmasked, so I guess he's dead. But when they make it back to camp, he jumps them through a window. Okay, this ending makes no fucking sense, so bear with me. So, they're jumped through the window, which prompts a long-ass shot of her getting jumped, all in complete slow-mo, before immediately cutting to Ginny being wheeled on a stretcher and asking where Paul is. Where is Paul? What the hell just happened? Did they forget to add a scene or something? I don't actually understand what the fuck happened here. But I guess fuck you, the movie's over. What? So, I think Friday the 13th Part 2 is a much better movie than the original. but it is still not perfect. I like this movie a lot more than I thought I would, which is surprising since most horror franchises start out on that banger entry and slowly gets worse over time. But Friday the 13th Part 2 impressed me by actually building on the foundation of the first movie and making a sequel that was better than the original in almost every way. The only caveat is the actual kills. The one thing you come to a Friday movie for, and they are just so lame. Not to say that a horror movie needs to have a shit ton of blood and gore to be scary or anything, but Friday the 13th is all about reveling in that sort of shit, so in this case it is disappointing. Also, that ending makes no sense. I don't even know what happened. Was Jason jumping them all a dream? Did Ginny black out? What the hell happened, movie? Tell me! But regardless, I think Friday the 13th Part 2 is a much better start to the series than the actual start to the series. Now let's see what number comes after 2. Holy shit. The first ones we see are this movie's horny couple, Sandra and Jeff, and let me tell you,